Bethesda is certainly no stranger to retcons, whether it's franchises that they've come in contact with, like Fallout, or if it's their own lore, which we can see in the Fallout series as well. But I wanted to revisit Fallout 4 to look at some of the retcons that stick out most to me, and some that raise a little bit of questions. So we're looking at 5 retcons in Fallout 4. Previously, Vertibirds were rare or in their prototype phase during the pre-war era of the Fallout universe, but we see them in the pre-war sections of Fallout 4 in Boston. And though this is kind of nitpicky, I don't really think that this is something that should be the case. Now, it has been argued amongst people who look into the lore of Fallout that these are a different model, but if they are indeed the same model of Vertibirds that we've seen in the Fallout franchise before, this is an incredible retcon that they have made to the series. There's so many that they've made, but this is one of the first ones you come across if you're familiar with lore. These Vertibirds, to the mind of somebody who's played Fallout, shouldn't be there, let alone be so abundant on the East Coast even post-war. So the Vertibirds in general are kind of a retcon in Fallout 4. Now, in Fallout 3, we see a lot of that as well, but we're not talking about Fallout 3 today. We're just talking about Fallout 4. More specifically with the Vertibirds, among other things that we see in the pre-war area of Fallout 4, Vertibirds were rare, and they were in their prototype phase for pre-war, but seems like they're working just fine in Boston.
No, I'm just getting warmed up.
Power armor is the subject to so many changes by Bethesda in Fallout 4 that it's almost laughable in my opinion, but a lot of them can be attributed to perhaps gameplay situations where they wanted to change things to make it so that the game worked right, and I can balancing and things like that. I can understand that and kind of get on board with that, but some of the lore things, it's just kind of weird. Pre-war, in all previous other games, the T-51 power armor was top of the line. It was the top of the line pre-war power armor that anybody could ever get. It was the best thing that you could get on the battlefield, period. All previous other games. But in Fallout 4, we get introduced to this T-60 power armor, which we also see pre-war. And Bethesda's excuse for this is, or their reasoning behind it, I shouldn't say excuse, their reasoning behind it is, well, these power armor suits rolled out right before the bombs dropped. Only some units got them, but we've never heard anything about this in any other Fallout game. So that's one of the biggest retcons in Fallout 4 right there, is this magical new power armor, the T-60, that is better than the T-51, which was previously the top of the line. And then seeing it in pre-war is a little bit jarring as well, but hey, here we are. T-60, being used pre-war. What happened to the T-51? I don't know. T-60's better. Here it is in Boston. When it comes to the gameplay mechanics side of things, where I think some of the lore got retconned to fit some kind of gameplay balance, we have the power armor cores. These, in previous games, were said to last 100 years. 100 years for sure. 100 years these things were supposed to last, and that's why when you got power armor in previous games, I'm talking about Fallout 1 and 2, you didn't have to worry about charging them or anything like that. Perhaps Fallout 3 is the same way. But now in Fallout 4, these same power armor cores, we know how long they last. They don't last very long. And if you go by 76's rules, which we're not talking about 76 in this video, but if you go by 76's rules, the retconned even further to last even less time. But in Fallout 4, they definitely don't last anywhere near 100 years. So that's a pretty big retcon on the way power armor works. But I like to attribute that to gameplay balance and trying to make the game playable while still keeping something like that to run that, because a lot of people have a problem with the way the power armor works in Fallout 4. I'm fine with it. It makes sense to me, and I like feeling like it's some kind of walking tank mech situation because it's supposed to be a big deal. But these cores got retconned in order to make maybe the game just a little more balanced, because if you just get Fusion Core, you just get a power armor suit, and yeah, it gets damaged, but it never runs out of juice, and maybe it's not very balanced, and so to add a little bit more balance, they probably affected the cores. But something that has nothing to do with gameplay mechanics, and what I believe to be the most egregious retcon of power armor lore in Fallout 4, is what happened to the APA power armor. Now, the APA, everybody assumed, was what the XO1 armor was. XO1 was, boom, APA. That makes sense. It kind of looks similar. It was just, oh, this is probably just following Fallout 4's art style. But what happened was the APA was reclassified as the XO1 and then put into a prototype phase. And then also, we have the Quantum Power Armor in Nuka World, which I'm going to get to in a second. But the reason this chaps my ass so much is because it takes a lot of steam and credit away from the Enclave as a faction, because the Enclave are credited with producing Advanced Power Armor, APA, post-war. And Advanced Power Armor Mark II is the best power armor in the Fallout universe. Now, we have the Quantum Power Armor that seems to take that place, the Quantum XO1 that you find in Nuka World, but that is pre-war, because in Nuka World, that enclosure that it's in hasn't been opened since before the bombs dropped, and we see a full set, painted bright with Quantum's beautiful colors, XO1 power armor. Whether or not it's in its prototype phase doesn't matter. The Enclave were the ones to make this power armor post-war. Now, some have argued that the APA that's in Fallout 2 is not the same armor that we see in Fallout 1. That it is a different type, and that's why it's called XO1. But I like to think that it's just retconned, and that's what the Enclave power armor is in Fallout 4. XO1, APA, same armor, and I think it was just embarrassingly retconned, because it takes away so much steam from one of the best factions in the entire franchise, which is the Enclave.
More power, baby. 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 More power, baby.
Another thing hanging out in pre-war when it shouldn't be in Fallout 4 is Jet. Jet is a post-war drug, but it seems a terminal suggests that it's being shipped to a pre-war vault. Now, this would be impossible because Myron, during the events of Fallout 2, a very post-war timeline, created Jet using the dung of Brahmin. Brahmin being a post-war animal as well. Of course, some would argue it could be substituted for cows, but in the lore of Fallout, it's made with Brahmin dung, which is probably different than normal, standard bovine dung. So, how is this possible? I imagine it is just an oversight by whoever was writing the terminal, or the whatever they were crafting for that vault, whatever story they were going for. It was probably just an oversight on their part. But it's something that Fallout fans immediately noticed, that, hey, this post-war drug couldn't possibly be delivered to a pre-war vault. What are you, out of your mind?
Boy, I really hope somebody got fired for that blunder.
Cats, like the honorable mention of this list, potatoes, have been a subject of controversy in the Fallout universe. In Fallout 4, it's claimed that potatoes are extinct, when in Fallout 3 they were very, very abundant, or at least you could find them in Rivet City. And we also have things like potato crisps, Instamash, stuff that's made from potatoes that you can even get into the DLCs for Fallout 4, but for some reason in Fallout 4, those are extinct, and we have the Tato plant, which is an extinct tomato plant and an extinct potato plant mixed together, and apparently they taste awful. But with cats, it's a little bit of a different story. We've heard through different characters through the franchise, in Fallout 2 especially, that cats are, for the most part, extinct, but we also hear it directly from Mr. House, and a lot of people attributed this to being maybe just on the West Coast they're extinct, and on the East Coast they're abundant. Maybe Mr. House was just wrong about cats. Maybe the person in Fallout 2 doesn't know what they're talking about, but from what I understand, they got hunted to extinction. But in Fallout 4, they're in abundance, so maybe people on the East Coast just didn't eat cats. I don't know what the deal is. Bethesda probably just wanted them in the game, wanted to put that, people like cats, going to put them in the game. And that means the developers probably like cats as well. They want to see them in the game. But lore-wise, they haven't existed for a long time. There's, like I said, there's mentions of one cat in Fallout 2, but it's you don't see it. It's an incredibly rare thing to see a cat, apparently. So to see them in such abundance in Fallout 4 is a little bit retconny, in my opinion. This manned mission was in 2052. In Fallout 4, we see a mural at the Museum of Freedom that shows a big battle happening sometime before 2077 at the Sea of Tranquility, which is on the moon. We see this depicted in the mural, like I said. There's also an inscription on the mural that gives us a bit of information about what it's referencing. This mural commemorates the many sacrifices of the brave men and women of the United States Armed Forces, from Lexington and Concord to the shores of Iwo Jima, from the Sea of Tranquility to the Anchorage front line. Americans have fought and died through the ages to secure our nation's freedom. May their sacrifices remind us all that freedom is a privilege afforded to the many, yet hard won by a noble few. This definitely suggests that some type of battle happened on the moon. For God's sakes, we see a giant mural of it inside the museum itself where this inscription is. They liken the battle to that of the Anchorage front line, so apparently it was quite a big battle. But this is the first we're hearing about it in the Fallout franchise. The reason I consider it a retcon is because something that important in the universe, I feel like we would have heard by now. Now, is it bad for Bethesda to want to add stuff like this? Not at all. But it is in turn a retcon if it's, you know, retconning lore that existed in the game. And what happened is we do have mentions of the moon in previous games. All of them say the last mission was in 2052. At least the last manned one was. So this battle seems to be created in Fallout 4, and we see it in Fallout 4 on this mural and in the inscription. And to me, that's a bit of a retcon. No matter how cool it looks, this is one of the best textures, one of the best art pieces in Fallout 4, period. But doesn't mean it's not retconning some of the lore.
We're whalers on the moon.
And that does it for 5 of the retcons that I noticed the most in Fallout 4. What about you? What ones did I miss? Are there any that really grind your gears? Are there any that you noticed immediately? Are there any that you have questions about? Maybe you can't find a whole lot of information online. You want to talk about with people who want to talk about this kind of stuff? You know, hit me up in the chat. In the comments, the chat, the Discord, anything you want to do, because we can talk about this. This is something that I enjoy talking about, the lore of Fallout. And of course, there's many more retcons in Fallout 4, as well as Fallout as a series. Fallout 2 has, you know, been inconsistent with the lore. Fallout 1 has been inconsistent with its own lore. There's even inconsistencies in New Vegas, which is pretty faithful to the core lore is what I like to call it. But yeah, well, you know, what about you? Which ones did you notice that I didn't really talk about here? Or which ones on my list do you think are the most egregious? Now let's give a shout out to those people who keep this ship afloat. These are people who pledge $5 or more to the month on Patreon or YouTube, and I am super grateful for all the support that you guys give me. We're looking at Kim Jong-un, Clay395, Fireflare, Tobias Vikstrom, Mr. Fantastic, Nero, Jay of the Jungle, Solar360, Triumph, Just55, Combat Carl, Genetically Engineered Panda, Sorry Boy, Player 426, James A. Evanston, Christian, Craniac Gaming, EMZT Radio, Bob Hunt, Hoppensada, Vellingham21, Lisbeth, Squiggles420, Nathaniel, and Skylar Masterson. And for YouTube channel members, we have It's Jimbo Dial, Mark 05790, Red, Bellingham21, Not Alex Jones, Craniac Gaming, James Starkey, Neometer Gaming, Mr. Fantastic, Cypriot Fox, Drongo Dingo, Shiny Espers, Keckley, Cadenza, Kim Jong-un, Samson Incorporated, Server Lols, Genetically Engineered Panda, Lisbeth, Bob Hunt, Skull and Suit, Nero, Jay of the Jungle, Triumph, Matt Jordan, James Meador, Clay395, Corbin King, Kyle S., Nylet Incorporated, TKS Gimper, and Fireflare. I want to send a special thanks to the producers of the channel, Triumph, Just55, Genetically Engineered Panda, Sorry Boy, Red, Solar360, and Combat Carl, and an even specialer thanks to the executive producers, Tobias Vikstrom, Mr. Fantastic, Nero, and Jay of the Jungle. And by the way, if I ever find out that you forgot about the TKs-Mantis Hall of Famers, the Mantis Hall of Famers, we got the Arc Pimp, Nero, the Arc Moderator Pimp, Fireflare. We have the Supreme Leader Pimp, Kim Jong-un, and the Rainmaker Pimp, Clay395. Thank you guys so much for the support. I couldn't do it without you. It has been Mantis.
I gotta testify. Come up in the spot looking extra fly. For the day you die, You gon' touch the sky, you gon' touch the sky, baby girl, testify. Come up in the spot looking extra fly. For the day you die, you gon'